Start by understanding what have to really means. When you use have to in English, you're talking about something that is not optional. It's a strong obligation, something you must do whether you like it or not. This could be because of rules, laws, or just the situation you're in. For example, if your boss tells you to finish a report, you have to do it. There's no way around it. This phrase is all about necessity and lack of choice. Throughout this video, we'll explore when and how to use have to in different situations so you'll always know when something is truly required. One of the most common uses of have to is when you're talking about rules or laws set by someone else. Maybe it's your school, your workplace, or even the government. These are things you can't ignore. For example, if your company requires uniforms, you have to wear one, or when you're driving, you have to stop at a red light. These aren't just suggestions, they're obligations you must follow. Using have to in these cases shows that the rule comes from outside yourself, and you don't really have a choice. Let's look at a workplace example. Imagine your boss tells you that everyone must wear a uniform. In this case, you have to wear a uniform at work. It's not about what you want, it's about following the company's rules. This is a perfect time to use have to because the obligation comes from your employer, not from you. Whenever you're required to do something at work, like attending meetings or following safety procedures, have to is the phrase you need. Another clear example is traffic laws. When you're driving, you have to stop at a red light. This isn't just a good idea, it's the law. If you ignore it, you could get a ticket or cause an accident. Using have to here shows that the rule is not optional. It's set by an external authority and everyone must follow it. This is why have to is so useful when talking about laws and regulations. School is another place where have to comes up a lot. For example, students often have to wear uniforms or follow certain schedules. These rules are set by the school and students don't get to choose whether to follow them. If the rule says you have to be in class by 8 a.m., then you must be there on time. This is another example of an external obligation, one that you can't ignore. Have to isn't just for rules and laws. Sometimes it's about things that are personally necessary. For example, if you're sick, you have to see a doctor. No one is forcing you, but it's extremely important for your health. In these cases, have to shows that something is necessary because of the situation, not because someone else says so. It's about what you must do for yourself. Sometimes have to is used when something is urgent. For example, if you're running late, you might say, "We have to leave now or we will miss the train." Here, the necessity comes from the situation. There's no outside rule, but if you don't act, there will be a negative result. Have to helps you express that sense of urgency and importance. Let's look at another personal necessity, health emergencies. If someone is very sick, you might say, "She has to see a doctor immediately." This isn't about following a rule, it's about doing what's necessary for someone's well-being. In these moments, have to shows that there's no real choice. The situation demands action. Imagine you're about to miss your train, you might say, "We have to leave now." The urgency is clear, if you don't act, you'll miss the train. This is another example of using have to for strong personal necessity. It's not about a rule, but about what the situation requires you to do right now. Now let's talk about grammar. In the present tense, you use have to for I, you, we, and they. For he, she, and it, you use has to. For example, he has to finish his homework. This small change is important for speaking and writing correctly. Remember, the form depends on the subject. Using the right form helps your English sound natural and clear. Let's see some examples of have to in the present tense. You might say, "I have to study for my exam," or "They have to clean their room." For third person, it's "She has to go to work." These examples show how the verb changes depending on who you're talking about. Practice using these forms to get comfortable with them. When you want to talk about obligations in the past, use had to for all subjects. It doesn't matter if you're talking about yourself, someone else, or a group, had to is always the right form. For example, yesterday I had to work late. This makes it easy to remember because you don't have to change the verb for different people. Here are some examples of had to in the past tense. I had to finish my project last night, or they had to leave early. Notice that the verb doesn't change no matter who you're talking about. This makes it easy to use had to when describing things that were necessary before now. To talk about obligations in the future, use will have to for all subjects. For example, tomorrow you will have to wake up early. This form is used when you know something will be necessary later on. It's easy to use because it doesn't change for different people. Just add will have to before the main verb. Let's look at some examples of will have to in the future tense. Next week I will have to travel for work, or you will have to study harder for the next test. These sentences show how to talk about things that aren't necessary yet but will be soon. Using will have to helps you express future obligations clearly. Now let's talk about the negative form. When you say don't have to, the meaning changes completely. It no longer means something is required. Instead, it means there is no obligation. You can do it if you want, but it's not necessary. For example, you don't have to pay today, it is free. This is very different from saying something is forbidden. Let's see some examples of don't have to. If someone says, "You don't have to come to the meeting," it means your attendance is optional, or "He doesn't have to finish the project today." In both cases, there's no pressure or requirement. You can choose what to do. This is a key difference from the positive form. It's important to know that don't have to is not the same as must not. Don't have to means something is not required, but must not means something is forbidden. For example, you don't have to pay means it's optional, but you must not pay means you are not allowed to pay. Mixing these up can cause confusion, so be careful with your choice of words. Common mistake is using don't have to when you mean must not. Remember, don't have to means you can do it if you want, but it's not necessary. If you want to say something is not allowed, use must not. For example, you must not enter means entry is forbidden, while you don't have to enter means it's your choice. To sum up, use have to when you're talking about strong obligations, rules, or things that are absolutely necessary. It's for situations where you have no choice whether the rule comes from outside or from the situation itself. Remember, the grammar changes for tense and subject, and be careful with the negative form. Let's practice with a workplace situation. Imagine your company has a rule: employees have to wear ID badges. This means every worker, no matter their role, must follow this rule. If you forget your badge, you might not be allowed inside. This is a clear example of have to for external rules. Now think about school. If the rule is students have to submit homework on time, it means every student must do it. There's no choice. If you don't, you might get a lower grade. This is another example of have to for obligations set by an authority. Let's try a personal necessity. If you're feeling unwell, you might say, I have to rest. No one is forcing you, but it's important for your health. This is a situation where have to is about what you need to do for yourself, not because of a rule. Imagine you're late for an appointment. You might say, we have to hurry. The urgency comes from the situation, not from a rule. This is a great example of using have to for things that are necessary right now. Let's practice with the past tense. If you say, yesterday I had to call my friend, it means the call was necessary at that time. Maybe it was important news or something urgent. Using had to shows that the obligation was in the past. Now try the future tense. Tomorrow I will have to visit the bank. This means you know in advance that the visit is necessary. Using will have to helps you talk about things you need to do later. Let's practice the negative form. If you say, you don't have to bring lunch, it means lunch is not required. Maybe food will be provided. This is a good way to show that something is optional, not necessary. Remember, if you want to say something is not allowed, use must not. For example, you must not smoke here. This is different from don't have to, which means you can choose. Must not is for strict rules and prohibitions. Let's do a quick quiz. If the sentence is, you have to wear a helmet when riding a bike, is this an obligation, a necessity, or an option? The answer is, it's an obligation because it's a safety rule. Practice identifying these in real life to improve your understanding. Here's another quiz. If the sentence is, you don't have to come early, is this an obligation, a necessity, or an option? The answer is, it's an option. There's no requirement to arrive early, so it's your choice. Last quiz for now. If the sentence is, you must not use your phone during the test, what does it mean? It means using your phone is strictly forbidden. This is a rule you must follow, not just an option. In daily life, you might use have to for chores. For example, I have to do the dishes. This means it's your responsibility, maybe because it's your turn or part of your routine. Using have to here shows that it's not just a suggestion, it's something you need to do. If you have an appointment, you might say, I have to see the dentist. This is something you need to do, either for your health or because you made the appointment. Have to makes it clear that it's necessary. At home, you might hear you have to clean your room. This is usually a family rule set by parents. It's not just a suggestion, it's an obligation. Using have to here shows that the rule comes from someone else. When you travel, you often have to follow entry requirements. For example, you have to show your passport at the border. This is a rule set by the country you're visiting. There's no choice, you must follow it to enter. On airplanes, you have to fasten your seatbelt during takeoff and landing. This is a safety rule, not a suggestion. The crew will check to make sure everyone follows it. Using have to here shows that the rule is serious and must be followed. In some stores, you have to pay before you leave. This is a store policy, not just a suggestion. If you don't pay, you can't take the items home. Using have to here shows that the rule is enforced by the store. Sometimes you might hear you don't have to buy anything. This means shopping is optional. You can look around without any pressure to make a purchase. The store is telling you there's no obligation. If someone invites you to a party and says you don't have to bring a gift, it means bringing a gift is optional. You're welcome either way. This is a polite way to say there's no obligation. In some clubs or groups, there are rules like members have to attend meetings. This means attendance is required. If you miss meetings, you might lose your membership. Have to makes the rule clear for everyone. Sometimes the rule is more relaxed. If someone says you don't have to join the activity, it means participation is optional. You can choose to join or not, and there's no pressure either way. Let's review the key points. Have to is used for strong obligations and things that are necessary, whether because of rules, laws, or situations. The form changes with tense and subject. The negative form don't have to means there's no obligation. And remember, must not is for things that are forbidden. Here are some tips for using have to. First, always check who the subject is so you use the right form. Second, remember the difference between obligation and option. And finally, practice with real-life examples to get comfortable with the structure. The best way to master have to is through practice. Try making your own sentences about your daily life, work, or school. The more you use it, the more natural it will feel. Don't forget to practice the negative and future forms too. To wrap up, have to is a powerful tool for expressing obligation and necessity in English. Whether you're talking about rules, personal needs, or urgent situations, knowing how to use have to will help you communicate clearly and confidently. Keep practicing and soon it will become second nature.